Hey everybody, if you're liking the CB vlog, why don't you go down there and hit subscribe under this very video, and that way you can get updates to every time we release one, so you can always see and be very, very happy on the days that we release these little videos. Okay, let's get to the big discussion this week.
Okay, so this week, the discussion topic we're going to get into is a technical thing. We're going to go into the technical tools we use to brew the decks. We've talked a lot about our philosophies and our ideas and our inspirations, but we're going to go through like the websites, the programs, the files and things like that, and how we do things. And, you know.
Yeah, and like the little tips for using those websites. So a lot of this you're probably going to be pretty aware of already as Commander players and brewers yourselves. But there's a lot of little like tips and tricks that you can find on these websites and things to use them for that are, I think, going to be really fun.
Yeah, so, I mean, let's start with one of the first big programs we use. This is not an online program. This is, you download this onto your computer. It's called Forge, MTG Forge. It is a open source software. I don't think it's for Mac. I think it's PC only. I use a PC, so I can't go into the technicals on it.
You can use it for Mac. It's a Java-based program, so you can actually, like, sometimes they'll have the like extractor file for Mac, and sometimes they won't. But either way, it doesn't matter. You can actually still just download the direct program, the Java program, like a zip file, and still run on your Mac. I know this because cool. I used to run this on a Mac all the time, and that hasn't changed. So that's cool.
Great. So what is Forge? Forge is sort of like it's actually a very cool program. I'm surprised more people don't know about it.
I know, me too.
It has like rudimentary AI built into it. So you can put your deck together in Forge, and then you can kind of play it against a couple of idiot AIs. They're not like I said, but you know what? It's way better than nothing. Like, they're good at combat math. Like, they know when they have you on board. They just don't know how to do subtle things like sacrificing creatures in response to things. And like they're not good at combos, and they can't play big picture game strategies. But just for like resolving spells and attacking and blocking, and the program automatically does all that stuff. So if you have a lot of triggers, it handles all those triggers for you. You just gotta like click yes or no to the May abilities. It's an excellent program.
Yeah, so that and that's actually really the side I'd say. I mean, I use it just for fun in that way. But when we're talking about brewing decks and things, that's the side I think like is the side we probably use the least, right? Like, we try to test our decks that way, but we don't always get a chance to. What really is something that Forge has built into it that's really great is two things. They have like a gatherer search right in there with like little clickable, you know, things. You can turn off certain colors, things like that. It's all very like
filters and stuff.
Yeah, filters. It's very intuitive. And just the visualization of your deck, and it'll be like laid out in one of the windows. It'll be laid out by CMC or however you want. You can sort in like visually the cards. So like for me personally, when I'm brewing, I love seeing that layout of the cards, and it reminds me of when I'm doing it in person with paper cards, and I'm laying them out in a certain, you know, way, and I can see what my curve looks like, and I can see, oh, these are, you know, I have this many of instants or sorceries or whatever, right? So Forge is amazing for that. It takes that like brewing in your head and looking at cards online and things like that, and just takes it to another level where you can like store it, have it visually represented, and to me that always helps me understand where my deck is at and what needs to add. One downside of Forge with the brewing side is that not every card in Magic is in it. There are a few, and when you really look at the grand scope of it, it truly is only a few. But
and Andy's not getting it like we don't mean like 1% of cards isn't in there. That would be like 1,000 cards. There's like a dozen cards that aren't in there.
I mean, I think it's more than that. I think it's probably closer to like 100.
Well, but I'm also like, I'm automatically discounting the Draft Matters conspiracies.
Yes, exactly. Right? And I'm not, right? So like,
okay,
you're right.
So...
You're right in that like it is a fairly small number of actually like usable cards. And sometimes like early when a set comes out, like for example with Guilds of Ravnica, there was like 1 or 2 cards that were like, oh, we're having like a little bit longer programming this, like we're having trouble doing it, so like wait till the next update and then it'll be there, right? And the program updates basically every day.
Yeah, it's open source, so like people are working on, they're like figuring it out, and people are eager to get the new cards in. When a new set drops, when the spoiler's out, like if a card is spoiled, it's going to be in the daily update in a couple of days if it's something that's already happened. And I don't mean reprints. I mean just like, oh, it's a creature, it does this thing. Other creatures have done that. That's already in the infrastructure of the thing. Cool, we can make that card happen. Sometimes the commanders get a little trickier. They take a little bit longer, but because they do unique things very often.
Yeah.
But I want to go, like, there's so few cards that aren't in there. The visual thing, on the left half, you have the search of all cards that exist. And on the right, you have your deck. And you can just search in your deck for any card that says draw to make sure you have enough draw cards. You can look on the left and look for cards that say draw, as well as say other words that you want, and just put those through as well. The actual searching is great for filters. It's great for just visually looking through. I want to see all the 3 mana instants in red. You can just browse through and get a nice visual look of all of them. It's great.
It's one of the ways also that we've done a couple of the decks on our show where it's like based on art or based on that sort of a theme.
Yeah.
Because like you can view art so quickly with it, right?
Yeah.
And
just
like sometimes like I honestly don't know how they do it now. Because it used to be that you had to like click some buttons in the program to download all the art, because it's not official, obviously. It's open source, not affiliated with Wizards. So certainly go and use Magic Online, use Arena, like if you want to play with people. I honestly think that's the way to do it if you want to play online.
This is not the best way to play by any means.
And they are implementing a multiplayer thing, but like honestly, I think it's better to like give your money to the people working on the programs that like are putting like they deserve that kind of money, right? But use Forge for this brewing thing. Use Forge to test your decks. I think it's great. Anyway, so I think deck brewing for us would take a lot longer if it wasn't for Forge.
Oh yeah, that's my first step. My first step is to fire up Forge, put in my card ideas, and then load them up. And I'll probably put 150 cards. You know how it goes. You got way more cards than you can fit in a deck. So I'll do that. But then one of the next steps that I like to use, I like to go to Scryfall, scryfall.com. If you don't already know about Scryfall, that is probably...
Oh, and sorry, just quickly, I just want to pop in here and just say that for all of these things, whether it be programs or websites or anything, you'll find all of these links in our show notes, or if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see them just below the video, of course, in the info and everything like that. So fear not, we're not just going to like spit a bunch of URLs at you. You can find them all at the end of the show or in the show notes.
Right. Back to Scryfall. Scryfall is hands down the best search engine for Magic cards out there. It is the most robust tool. So it has so many useful things. One of my favorites for Commander is you can look at the syntax. The syntax goes pretty deep. There's a lot of different ways to search for things. But if you type C:, you get to say what colors the cards are. But there's another one in there called ID:, and it'll say, because if you say search for green cards, it'll give you green red cards. It'll give you green blue cards. It'll give you green white cards. But if you're just like, I want to search by ID, things that are ID, white, black, blue. So Esper color cards, and it'll give you colorless cards. It'll give you white cards, blue cards, black cards, combinations, anything that would be usable by a commander of that identity, ID. Such a useful tool.
Yeah, one of the things I think is a little intimidating about Scryfall, and one of the things that honestly I have trouble with, which is actually why I lean towards Forge for this sort of thing, is that idea of the syntax. I find it hard to remember the syntax a lot of the times, the little codes that you need to use. While it does create like an amazing amount of customization in your searches and things like that, and I definitely do use it. But if that does intimidate you, or if you finding it hard to remember like me, there's actually a little thing you can click on right on the website that's syntax. Like they have the little thing and it'll say everything you need. But also on top of that, they do have like a clickable like interface for you to like click the colors. So like kind of like magiccards.info, which is a site that we used to use before Scryfall came along. It still exists. It's still that site's still good. I just find that Scryfall's always up to date, always ready to go, and basically provides you with the same functionality, except that has other little things, like it'll display on the main page, like there'll be a little link of like the current spoilers that are happening.
Yeah,
and they're pretty good and pretty up to date about that sort of thing. And
yeah, I want to throw one more cool thing. One of my favorite syntax tools One of my favorite syntax tools is the O, which means oracle text. So I'm looking for words that appear on the card. So I'll do O colon quotation marks, draw a card. So I want all the cards that say draw a card, cool, and I'll get a million of them. But then sometimes I'm like, oh, you know what? It keeps giving me these cycling ones.
Yes.
I don't care about that. Yeah. So then you do another one. You just add to your little bar at the top, minus O, cycling. So now it'll take away all the ones with cycling. It's like, you know what? I'm getting a lot of this weird mechanic that was in one set that I hate. I don't want those. Minus this. So
and that is something actually we should point out that Forge doesn't do well. Is the minusing of words. In that case, you go to Scryfall and they'll be very helpful for that.
Yeah. When you want to say what cards draw a card, like Forge, like you get a really loose search, but Scryfall's so tight.
And getting a loose search is really good. I will say that, right? One of the things that you can do in deck building and looking for cards and stuff like that is to get too specific sometimes. So I like to start it off by searching for a specific card wording that I want. Like if I know there's a card that does something, I'll look for that same wording that's Oracle, because most times it'll go back and the Oracle will have changed all things that do that to that same kind of wording, and then broaden it out, and then go to Forge and just search for those words and find the different combinations of them. Anyways.
Like if you're just like, oh, I want to know what cards put things on top of libraries.
Yeah.
Right? So you can be like, search for top of library, right? And then you can find the cards that do it. It's great.
But you'll find so many things with Scry.
So many things with Scry. So minus
Scry.
Yeah. One of the great tools that we haven't even mentioned yet is that you can choose how you sort the cards that they're showing you. You can sort by price in US dollars. You can also give a range, like I don't want to see cards that are more than $1 if you want. I don't want to see cards that are more than $10. You can set whatever you want. So you can just, sometimes when we're thinking about budgets, we'll be like sort by price, and you just skip the first half a page. Like these are the ones that are over $5, but after that they get much more affordable. You can search by EDHREC ranking. So the cards that appear the most on EDHREC, which we will get to in a moment. So those ones you can sort that way to see which cards, like, oh, commander players, when you're looking for bouncing a creature, commander players like these cards the best. So you can be like, I guess I'll start there for my search then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that seems to be like a nice segue into talking about EDHREC. Why not, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
So EDHREC is a controversial tool, obviously. A lot of people love it. Some people are not as big fans of it. If you haven't ever been to EDHREC, I definitely recommend checking it out. I know, first of all, a lot of good people working on that website, a lot of good people writing for that site. So it's a great site just in general. But what EDHREC does is it takes a lot of data on commander decks that are submitted by its users, and then it'll obviously spit out lots of different statistics and, like, you know, if this card is in these commander decks, like here are the other cards, so on and so forth. So if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. But most of us are probably pretty familiar with it. The reason it's kind of controversial is because, like, a lot of people say it hurts, like, creativity within Commander, because, you know, it's right there for you. I want to build a, you know, Yidris deck. So here's the top, you know, 50 cards in a Yidris deck. And so someone could theoretically go, oh, great, I'm just going to add all these cards. They seem to be the agreed upon best cards for this deck. Great, that's my deck. And if that's what you want to do, that's cool. Like if you just want to get that type of deck out there and get it rolling, it's very quick. Makes there's really no brewing to it. You kind of just like look at a list and do it. But I don't think that's what most people are doing with EDHREC. And I think most people are looking at it for inspiration to, like, and other cards to add and things like that. And I'll tell you how I use it specifically, because I know Sean doesn't really use it very much. But
I do use it, but I'll tell you how I use it after you say how you use it.
Great. So I like it. I like to look at EDHREC after I've brewed a deck, right? So I've brewed a whole deck together. I've got and like maybe not the very final step, but like, well, I've got like 104-ish cards or something, right? So I'm there. I'm making my final cuts. What I like to do is I like to go to EDHREC. I like to look at the commander, and I like to say, what are some of the, like, crazy obvious interaction cards that I've missed? Because that will inevitably happen. Like, there's some, like, stone cold gotta have it card that everyone has agreed upon is, like, an amazing card with this. It combos or something like that. And then I get to decide, do I want to do it, though, right? You still get to make that decision. Sometimes it's like a utility card that's like, oh yeah, I would definitely run this. This interacts with my commander so well, and it helps the strategy I want to do. So yeah, I just forgot about this card or something, right? That's something. I don't like to do it from at the beginning because I think it's going to influence me too much, and I want to brew my own. I want to be creative my own way like that. Another good way is when you can look at cards that, for example, in this last step, like the way I do it, where like, have I forgotten anything obvious? Then you can look at, and it can show you the budgeting for those cards too. It's like, well, I forgot that card, but that's because it's $20. Or in the other way, like in the opposite.
Oh, can I interrupt for half a second?
Yeah.
Oh, just because what Andy's referring to is if you look up the page of EDHREC by commander, it'll put up the top like the most common signature cards. Mm-hmm. But in the bottom right corner of the card image, there's a little overlay of the current price of that card. That's what Andy's getting at. As visually, you can see like, oh, this card's a quarter. I thought it was $5. It must have gotten a reprint I wasn't aware of. Absolutely, that's going in. Yeah, or like, vice versa. You're just like, oh, you know what? That's a great card, but it's $25. No, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And so we've been brewing decks for so long and keeping budget in mind that there are some cards that like a couple months ago were $5 or $10, but they've dropped in price for whatever reason. And sometimes you're not always aware of that. So looking at EDHREC can show you that, hey, not only is this card that you thought, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to include that card because it's too expensive. I know it works well with my deck, but it's too expensive. Then you look there and you see it and you're like, oh, well, actually, I can put it in. Great. So it can help you get some key cards in your deck that you weren't thinking of or that you just plain forgot about. Or, it also shows you the uniqueness of cards in your deck. So, like, you can submit your deck as a finished thing, and it'll show you cards that like no one else is really running these cards in this deck. So you might go, oh, I kind of want to maybe key on that a little bit. Like the fact that no one else is really running this can be another source of inspiration, which I think is really great.
Yeah, I want to dovetail on that too. Like the source of inspiration is great for me. So I generally won't use EDHREC. Like you said, I don't like to start there for the most part because I want to come up with my ideas myself and see how they go. I do think, I mean, I have heard that before. I've heard people say a lot of the decks are too similar because if you just do cookie cutter decks, that's fine. I mean, what does cookie cutter mean? Sure, lots of people have them because it's agreed upon the best brew. So, okay, great. Like that's not like... That's what you're going to do. That's what it's there for. But I think one of the technical issues is that EDHREC pulls data from a bunch of websites where people put their decks. Like people put their deck lists on their accounts, and EDHREC kind of mines all those. So you can see how, like, if I copy that Yidris deck and put it on my profile on these deck hosting, and another 100 people copy the deck, put it on their profiles, then now there's 100 more decks of that are there, and that just becomes, it kind of enforces the echo chamber of itself. I can see how that happens, but...
Yeah, and I know that that's something that, like, Donald, the creator, he wants to... Like, the problem always happens every year when a new Commander deck... Like Precon will come out,
right?
And people will just upload it to their own personal TappedOut like whatever, and then they'll make a few changes, and like that's where they like to keep it. And then they might submit it to find other cards and things like that I just said. But that also just tells EDHREC, the website, that hey, I'm using all the cards from the Precon in this deck, so you'll always find a strong correlation between cards from the Precon and cards that were like the commanders for those, even though.
Right.
Maybe a lot of people, or sometimes people just put the precons up just to like store it in their Deckbox or whatever, like whatever.
Because it's a convenient way to find that list again. If you're just
exactly.
like, what precon? Yeah, that some people, not everyone uses these deck hosting sites as actual decks they have. They're just ideas and things.
Yeah, and I mean I don't know if it's crawling TappedOut. I don't think it does. I think it does. Does it? I thought it still relied on submissions.
No, I think it crawls data from TappedOut, Deckbox. Like I think that's why EDHREC is so powerful, because it gets data from all kinds of websites where there's just hundreds of decks people have posted.
It's almost as if we should ask someone from the website how it works.
Yeah.
I know.
Donald,
I obviously
Donald,
like
if you're listening.
Yeah, Donald, if you're listening, if Jason's listening, he's in with those guys. Yeah. So either way, like it's sometimes it does reinforce things that aren't necessarily true, and I know that that's something that those guys are actively always trying to think of and kind of fix. And I think they've come a long way since they first started.
Big time.
And either way you look at it, I truly do think this, like, either you just want to go there to find like the common cards and the cards that are best used, or you want to be creative and help fill some deck holes. Like Deck holes, you deck hole. I do think EDHREC is a really good tool, and you can use it however you want to. Nothing says you have to make one of the cookie cutter decks. Absolutely, like, you know us, we don't do that, and I use EDHREC just about every time I brew a deck. So
I guess I got sidetracked, but the way that I use it the most is if I don't have a deck idea solid, but I'm just like, you know what, I haven't done Esper in a while. EDHREC is a great way. You can just click on colors, three colors, Esper, and it'll show you all of the eligible commanders that are in Esper. It'll show you how many decks it has data for, so you can be like, oh, there's like over 1,000 people with this deck, but this commander only about 50 people have used it. Maybe I'm gonna lean towards that one. And
it's fun to do that for like a challenge almost. It's fun.
Yeah, it's got that little budget overlay on all of them, so you're just like, you know what, this one is like a nickel, so like, that's my commander, I'm gonna brew around this one right here.
To me, it's the fastest way, even despite the two we just mentioned, Forge and Scryfall, which are great card search engines. EDHREC is the fastest way to find the eligible commanders for a color pair, because it's like a little drop down menu. It's like, if you know I'm looking for a Naya commander, bam, it'll show you all the combinations, the partners, everything.
Okay, so far we've used Forge to throw together like 150 cards. We've jumped over to Scryfall to find more specific searches about effects that we're looking for. Maybe we want to nail down some CMCs or something like that. Then we've gone over to EDHREC to just see if we've missed any key players, or if there's any other like decks that have some things we've forgotten, for the first hint on budget. But here's the next part, is where we get really into the budget here. So I'm going to take my deck list and go to MTG Goldfish. That's another website that we use a lot, mtggoldfish.com. On a broad note, they do tons of cool videos just about standard and like just fun brews that way. They have, and
everyone knows Saffron Olive.
Saffron Olive's the best. Oh, yeah. He's so funny, and just such a wonderful person to watch stream. So fun. But they have a tool right up top. You can go up on the top under Tools. There's a drop down that says Deck Pricer, and it gives you a big box that you copy paste your entire deck list into there. And if you used Forge to brew it, you can copy it directly from Forge, and then Control A, Control C.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that it is so easy to do that. It's easy to copy a deck list. There's no importing or exporting. You don't have to do this into a text file and blah 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 blah. You literally just, like Sean said, click select all with a Control A, and then Control V, bam. You have to do that in the list view. Like, you can't do it in the visual view. But if you do it in the list view, which is like literally a click of one button to look at that, you just select them all, copy, paste them right into MTG Goldfish.
And that's not the only way too. Like I mean, if you go to from your main menu, you can double click deck view and copy to clipboard and then just paste it. Anyway,
there's lots of ways to do it that are very easy.
So many ways. You go to Goldfish, you put it up there, and it gives you the total price of the deck. And it gives you you can sort by online price from MTGO, or you can look for paper, or you can look for how many wild cards it would take you to build this in Arena, if it's in standard legal. But this is actually how we do the prices. When we tell you the price of the deck, this is where we get our data from. And it also ranks the cards. It tells you your 3 most expensive cards. It's not... there's unfortunately no way to sort by price, which is a little bit difficult, because there's no way to just look for, like, it shows you the picture of what card is the most expensive, but it doesn't tell you the name of it. So you're like, what is it? It looks like some sort of lightning bolt. Is that is that so? But you can just look through all the prices and scans, like, well, anything that's $10 or more, it gets that extra digit in the price. That's easy to find. But and so I'll put my deck into there, which is already way too many cards and the budget's way too high, but I can immediately know, I'll cut all the $10+ cards that aren't like crucial and amazing. Sometimes you find I've got a $50 card and I guess that's out.
That happens to me pretty often. This weird old card, there's no way it costs any money, and then it's $90. You're like, what? Okay.
Must be reserve list.
Yeah, exactly. That's the number one thing too. And another great thing that's probably less useful for Commander players, but it can be relevant, is that on MTG Goldfish, there's metagame info, which is something that's it's just a small thing, but you can actually click on the different meta games, and it's just in one of the pull down menus for decks, I think. You can view standard, modern, Pauper, but also 1v1 Commander and regular Commander. Now those are competitive, so because it's like reporting from like tournaments and stuff. But you can see like what the top decks in any given format are, and if you wanted to like, oh, you know, maybe what's a card I'm missing from this or whatever, or what are the competitive players running. That's so good. You can find it there. It's actually can be helpful from time to time. And they do like most pricing sites, but I actually really like the way Goldfish lays it out. Is they have an individual card price history also. You'll see a little graph and it'll show you, and you can extend it or shorten it to view when a card spiked, or maybe you're like, oh, I have a bunch of these, maybe I do want to sell them. So it can help you with the like financial part of it as well.
Yeah. And then so lastly, once we got our decks done, where do we keep the info? Where do we store the decks that we have? We, on the podcast, you can find all of our decks on TappedOut.net/commandersbrew. We put all of our decks up there. That's a great way to upload a deck. You can put it, you can sort it by a bunch of tabs, like the colors that it is. It doesn't like collect your, like you have to manually sort it into folders. We've got lots of decks on there, and it is a mess. Like if you're to go looking for a specific deck, you kind of have to look for it by name. It's not easy to filter through someone's profile, but it's nice to have them all there.
Yeah, it's weird, you know. I've been using Tapped Out basically ever since I've started playing Magic. I think a lot of us are like that, especially those of us who've started later, but it's not perfect, but it's kind of like the best we have to like just let people easily display or view decks that we want to display. Like it's got a good like visual representation of your deck. It'll show you like a breakdown of, you know, the colors and the CMC and things like that, all in kind of one spot. So it does that really quickly for you, and you can see that easily. It's not the best for sharing, like you said. It's not the best for searching. It's like it's not perfect, but it's good. And like, you know, I've never really interacted with any of the people that run it, or a long time ago, I know it was only one guy running it, but I'm sure it's a lot of work there, you know. But if something better came along, I wouldn't be upset about it.
I do know my favorite feature of TappedOut.net that I think is highly underrated is that that gives you your deck stats, your average CMC, but it also tells you which tokens your deck makes. So if you're like me and you're like, oh, I want to know what tokens, it's like, oh, look, I forgot that I have a card that makes like, you know, a gold counter. So I'll need to get one of those in my little token box.
I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
It's not obvious, but like it tells you, like sometimes I'm just like, ugh, that's too many tokens. I'm going to cut one of those.
That's too many tokens, and it makes
too many types of tokens.
Oh yeah. It makes too many types. Like I can't. I don't have any snakes. I don't want to run this card. So I think whereas I think TappedOut.net is a great way to like display the decks you've built, and that way people can like upvote them and comment on them and things like that. I think Deckbox.org is a great one for like a personal inventory of decks and your cards. So that's what I use to store my personal collection, like there, and also my decks there. I also have a tapped out like profile as well that it's not as up to date, but anyways, deckbox.org is a great place to actually keep an actual inventory of the cards you use. Now I've personally I've put like all of my cards are on Deckbox, so I can view my whole collection there. It takes some time to do that. My collection's not as big as some people's also, for sure. But it's really, really helpful when you're wanting to look for cards. Like I've got a certain number of copy of these cards and I want to know what decks they're in, or I want to know, you know, if I even have them. You can look that up very easily on your own personal Deckbox profile. Keeping your decks sorted there, I've found to be so helpful. So helpful, because you know sometimes you'll swap cards in and out of decks, and if you're on top of it, so like every time I make an order, I put it into Deckbox, and then once in a while, you know, every couple months probably, I'll just look at some of my decks and I'll go like, are these, like, I've made some changes here, did I put them on Deckbox? And yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but it's well worth it for the times when you need to track something down. It makes it so easy. Like if I need a card before I'm going to run out to go play Magic or something, I can literally just type it into the Deckbox. It'll show me what decks it's in. Great. Okay, perfect. I'll just grab those decks with me as I go or something like that.
And remember to, grab those decks, or if you take it out of the deck, remember to adjust Deckbox that you've taken.
Yes, that's the thing. Like it is upkeep, certainly, but like if you want to stay again, I'm not even totally perfectly organized or anything like that. I'm not a super organized person, but Deckbox has just helped keep that like there's a place for it where I can look, and at the very least you can look and see, well, it used to be in this deck, but now where is it?
Good. The last thing I want to point out that Deckbox is very good at is it has great export features to spreadsheet form, to like CSV format. So if you like to like do your own spreadsheeting or anything like that, that's the most robust feature of Deckbox as well.
Yeah, they also have a price feature on it. So like you can look, I do this from time to time where I look at my own decks and then I'll sort by price and then go, oh, like this card, oh wow, this card went up a bunch in cost or something, or vice versa. It's not an exact science because it's based on their own market. So like Deckbox has that also, where like you can trade and sell and buy cards inside of Deckbox.org, which I've done before.
Never do that.
I've done it before. I've bought cards from people on there. I've never sold any cards, but you know, it's there to do. You can sort those people by like location, so you can do it in person, like almost like a Craigslist type thing where you can meet up with that person. You can do it all over the mail or something if you want, whatever, right? But you can sort by people. They also have groups, I know. So like there's like a Toronto trading group that like I'm in.
Oh, cool.
Have I ever used it? Absolutely not. But I'm not against using it. It just hasn't come up where I've wanted to just yet. But but if you're into that sort of thing, it's got a great community around it. It's got a lot of people on it. Like really, for the organization thing, I can't recommend it enough. It's absolutely fantastic. And if you ever want to find all of my personal really kept updated decks, like you can find them on my deckbox.org, which I guess I'll post. Cool. I'm not embarrassed. I'll show my whole collection. I don't care. But yeah, but the prices will be a tiny bit off because it is based on their own market. So sometimes people will be selling one for way more than market price, and it'll kind of it makes the card adjust sometimes. But generally, it's pretty accurate.
Oh man, so that takes it. Those are all of the technical tools we use to brew and then put together and decks. And I think we wouldn't be complete if we don't say that. Like I end up ordering most of my cards from the Wizard's Tower, wizardtower.com. But I'm sure you've got you can think of any number of stores you've gone to or you like to go to. But if you're in Canada, give them a browse. They got they're great. They'll ship cards to you for free in Canada if you buy $15 or more. We've got a coupon, City of Brews, right now. And they also do articles and interesting things. And if you like competitive Magic, I will encourage you to go give a listen to. They do the Disorganized Wizards Club also. It's another Ottawa-based podcast that they talk about all the competitive stuff sides of Magic. Standard, Draft, Modern, even a little bit of Legacy. And they're brilliant. They're brilliant.
Yeah, and I mean I think most websites have this sort of feature now, but I love the one on Wizards Tower where you can just put in a list of cards or a whole deck, and then they'll just they spit back out like all the different versions of it, so you can see. So like if I wanted to find a Solemn Simulacrum, and it, like within my own deck, right? So I put the whole deck up. It'll show me every card that they have available, and then it's like, okay, it'll show you all the different versions of Solemn Simulacrum, for example, and then so that way you can pick the one you want, the cheapest one, I don't know, or the crazy foil one if you want, the masterpiece. You know,
the cheapest, slightly played one.
Yes, exactly, always. Oh, what, I'm saving 4 cents because this one's slightly played? Done. Like, that's the kind of commander player and deck brewer that I am.
Yeah, man.
I will save 4 cents by playing a card that's slightly beat up.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, that was a bit of a longer discussion than normal, but we think there's a lot of cool technical tips in here. And as always, if you've got some cool websites or features or the way you like to brew, we'd love to hear about it in the comments. It's by sharing these ideas that we all get to discover some cool new ones. So please put a comment below if you got another thing that you use to brew. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Big thanks to all our patrons who make these episodes possible. Yeah, and if you want to check out more comedy videos, check out our Brews News playlist. Make sure you follow us on Twitch TV to see when we play live. If you want to chat with us, head over to Twitter. We're @CommandersBrew. And please hit subscribe to ding the bell and find out when we got new stuff coming out. See you next time. Bye.